So I have really been looking forward to this because I, as a futurist, of course, even though I have a specialty in media, I know nothing about that kind of in-depth knowledge that you have within your particular industries. So I have really been looking forward to this panel, and I'm really excited to moderate it and hear some of your reflections on the future as well as the past. So in the next hour or so, I don't know how long it'll take, we'll see how the flow goes.
Cool.
And, start raising your hands and, moving really, if you need a drink suddenly, then we can have a look at that. But we'll be diving into different topics related to the intersection of technology, consumer behavior, and music. And especially, I think we would focus a lot on the last 50 years, that we should be careful not to throw away in this rapid transformation of the industry. Because I do agree, it's going really, really fast. And especially at the moment, it's going I cannot do a talk without seeing what's been happening for the last day or two. Then I will not have the newest kind of information happening in the industry. And that's a bit scary, I think, that it changes so fast. So focusing on how and why it's important to keep the human and the audiences in the center of the development. So is the industry focusing too much on emerging technological trends? Is something that we're going to dive into. So with me here today, I'm joined by three amazing and talented people who all have different approaches to the music industry. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Just take it in. Let's start over there with you, Stephen Price, an Academy Award-winning film composer with a unique story-driven approach to the craft of film scoring. Yeah, that was the wrong comma there. No, film scoring from the movies Gravity and Baby Driver. I'll let you introduce yourself in a bit. I'm just introducing the panel first. So you already know Rasika, but I'll just remind you that she's a director of product marketing and communication at, wrong one. Principal analyst from Futuresource Consulting, exploring the current trends and data in audience consumption, where and how people are listening to music and what reach hearables have into UK and global households. And lastly, there you go, Andy Kerr, Director of Product Marketing and Communication at Bowers Wilkins. Thank you so much for having this great musical experience up there. Who has worked with the audio industry for 28 years.
Yeah.
Updated, it was 27 here, but it's actually 28, so a lot of industry knowledge there. So you really understand the importance of sound and how the interplay between technology and vision can take your ears on a fascinating journey.
Hope so.
So welcome to you. A hand to the panel first. All right, so I've said a little bit, but could you maybe also shortly introduce yourself and especially with one or two sentences describe what you find most interesting when talking about the future of recorded music industry? And I'm just in a few sentences because we're going to dive into it later. Let's start with you, Andy.
Oh, okay, go this end. Well, that's good, okay. So my name's Andy, I'm a music addict. It's at least 3 days since I bought my last album. I think the first thing that defines who we are and what we do is clearly the fact that you're here, right? We're very fortunate to be very heavily involved with all aspects of audio. I mean, I think we're traditionally known for our heritage of being a loudspeaker brand. Today what we do is everything. It's really interesting listening to your presentation and how diverse the modern consumer is in terms of how they access audio and what they do, and that's obviously something that we're trying to do. We consider ourselves today to be very much, an audio brand, not just a loudspeaker brand, and we're meeting those needs kind of anywhere. So the future, I think, is a key part of who we are and what we're trying to do, right? Which is whatever the listener wants to try to do, wherever they are, whatever kind of music they're listening to, and however they're consuming it. We want to try and give the best possible experience. I think that's fundamentally the main thing. We're still focused on, do you care about it, but also can we deliver it in the highest possible quality?
Thank you. Rasika?
Hi everyone, I'm Rasika D'Souza with Futuresource. For the past 10 years, been associated with audio hardware and headphones tracking, and I'm still continuing to do that. And I manage a team of analysts who look at some of these trends at Futuresource. In terms of what's really interesting for me, and Andy touched upon it already, is how the industry is now circling back to audio quality again, and they're talking about it so much. And it's not just the industry, but even consumers are seeking out products with, which are, of higher quality so that they can get the best possible experience. So that's an exciting time for the industry and also for consumers. So yeah, that's something that we look forward to see.
Yeah.
Hello, my name's Stephen Price, and I do music for film and TV and anything that really wants me to do music. And yeah, the whole thing for me is that I see what I do as storytelling, and so I use music to help directors, writers to tell their stories, and it's a matter of how we can best express that, and obviously that means how you listen to it, how you experience the music, how you experience the films, and it's, I've been doing this for 25 years, and it's changed a lot in that time, and we've gone through the streaming thing, we had the DVD thing, we've had all these different things, and it's just a matter of what really helps move people and find the emotion of it all. And that's, where things like the quality improving and all that stuff is of great fascination to me. So that's my take.
Thank you, perfect. So let's dive a little bit into these trends. So as you've just heard before, we really love to explore these uncertainties, these huge uncertainties, and try to identify the biggest uncertainties with the largest impact when we explore possible scenarios. So you saw my two crosses, like the development of the technology and also the regulation. So what do you think are the biggest uncertainties we're seeing in the industry at the moment?
Wow. I mean, I think we've all collectively been through a pain curve, haven't we? We were speaking about it a little bit earlier on, where there was probably some real fear within the industry. I'm sure there certainly is in certain parts of the industry, but definitely there was some very real fear in the kind of mid-late 2000s, the kind of emergence of MP3 and everything that represented, the decline of physical. It's really interesting today how physical's kind of come back, but in a completely almost anachronistic kind of way. I mean, obviously for me, it never went away, as you can probably tell, but for a lot of people, vinyl is like new and novel, which is kind of weird. But I think, where does it go to now? There's two unknowns, aren't there? There's how the customer, the consumer, whatever you want to call them, who's finding music on TikTok, translates that next. Do they just stay that way? Do they only ever view that as their only path to music? Or as they get older, do they do what probably most of the rest of us did, which is migrate away from streaming, or migrate away from streaming as the only thing into listening at home, listening on physical devices as well? Maybe that's one aspect of it. I suppose the other question is, how does quality, which we're all seeing in streaming services, right? Streaming services are pushing that quality message. How does that play into TikTok access? Because that's a different socialization of music access, isn't it? That's about routes to content, routes to sharing. It's not necessarily underpinned by a qualitative message, unlike taking out a Tidal subscription or any other music streaming service that might be available.
Do you think people will start finding music again in record stores?
Well, that's how I did it. I mean, as we were talking about it earlier on, right? I mean, I think that there's a very different vibe in record stores today compared to when I was buying records. It was much more combative. But record stores, they were, weren't they? You had to fight your way through the wall of noise to kind of get to the record. I think the main point is it's a parallel path. I think in terms of that part of it, when you get to the point in life when you're ready to buy, as opposed to access, then you're already partly down the road of being prepared to pay for streaming as well, being prepared to pay for higher quality already, because you are aware of the fact that that exists. I don't want to confuse what I'm saying here. I'm not saying that the world's going to come to an end when 18-year-olds turn 25. It's more a case of how do we get those 18-year-olds to think about the next steps and what is the mechanism for that, how that translates. I think that would be really interesting, because at the moment, it's great people are listening to music. What we collectively all want to do is then turn that into opportunities as they get to a point where they're ready to spend money.
What do you think?
Well, actually, I want to kind of just build on Andy's point as well, and that is an uncertainty in my mind, how the Gen Z or Gen Z consumers, how are they going to respond, beyond, music discovery on TikTok? I mean, our own research has shown that, about 45% of Gen Z consumers discover music on TikTok. That's quite a substantial number. And, how do we get them away from, just listening to music on their personal devices to actually investing in, or exploring, higher quality audio and, exploring new mediums to listen to music. So that's a big challenge. How do you encourage them to, take that next step forward? And it's probably when they can afford it.
Yeah.
But it's also giving them the opportunities to, explore these avenues and explore these opportunities. Previously we would walk into a retail store and, well, I'm not saying every retail store has the capability to demonstrate good quality sound, but there are at least some stores where you could experience this. But, today the world has again moved online. You're purchasing everything online. So, how do you demonstrate that to these younger consumers, that, well, actually, when you listen to this on a really good quality system, the experience is completely different. So for me, that's a big uncertainty and a big unknown.
Yeah, I think the quality thing is crucial. I'm the father of 2 teenage girls, and the way that they have got into music is so far away from my experience, which would literally be going to a record shop, going on the bus on the way home, reading every single detail about that record, which would kind of start you on a journey of collection almost. You'd kind of want to know all the records by that group, all of the people involved in it, what they did. Whereas my kids have no interest in that at all. They're more than happy to let the algorithm serve up the next song and kind of be spoon-fed a little. And when they do find a song they like, which might be something I know from, my youth, it's like, oh, well, if you like that one, you like this album. No interest whatsoever. And somehow I wonder...
There's not a TikTok video to it, so...
Well, that's it. But I wonder how we changed that to make people want to feel the ownership again. Because if you've grown up without that sense of ownership, you don't care if you collect all the records.
I mean, in a really interesting point, Steve, because the other side of the coin of that is, and we were talking about it earlier on, is that did inspire tribalism.
Yeah.
Right? It did inspire a kind of cultural... You latched onto that band, you latched onto that record, partially because you couldn't afford to go out and buy 1,000 records a year, I imagine. So most of the people that you bought were people that you were likely to be interested in.
You'd get into that whole record because you couldn't afford another one for a while, yeah.
So, and I think that's the really encouraging side of it the other way around, right? I mean, that tribalism in fashion that used to pertain to how you listen to music, you just don't see anymore. In the main, most teenagers look pretty much alike in how they wear, what they dress, and that links into, I think, potentially a much broader, more eclectic way to approach music, to your point, not necessarily defined by an artist or funneling down through a genre, but just, do I like it? And that's actually probably quite healthy, or it's certainly interesting anyway.
And it's interesting regarding the ownership, right? Because we have also seen some moves towards seeing if we can reinvent ownership by, let's say, NFTs and the whole blockchain that has sort of disrupted a lot of the scene and is now, again, the hype curve is not really up for NFTs. Sorry, just a question. Any of you in here are working within blockchain and NFTs? Nope. Okay, so anyway, good. Interesting, right? Because it has been this huge wave of coming in and sort of seeing if we can reinvent some kind of wish for ownership again for the music. Do you think that the uncertain will, in your opinion, do you think people would want to have that kind of relationship with an ownership of a full record?
I think if we can make it special to them, really. I see my kids desperately after a particular vinyl edition because it's got a special artwork thing that can't be got anywhere else, and that becomes a kind of an ownership thing. But I can't help but think if we present them with something special and unique, that becomes something to be excited about. Whereas if everything kind of feels very easy and simple and hasn't got a unique selling point, why would they get excited about it? Why would they want to own it?
I think, owning record labels has kind of become now a novelty. There's a novelty factor to it. Previously we all did it because that was the only way to listen to music. But now it's more, as to your point, if there's something really novel about it, that's when consumers really want to own it. And I think the reason why subscription services have grown so much is, I think, because that mindset of, wanting to physically own CDs or, a certain label or a certain, from a certain artist, that's, the mindset has started to change with consumers as well, that, they're just happy with owning it as long as they pay for the service. And I think that's taken a fair few years, to get to, but I think that's where I see, that's how I see that streaming services have grown so much the way they have.
I think also, look, I mean, I'm always conscious when we talk about this sort of stuff that there's an expectation that I'm going to represent the kind of the old school hi-fi way of thinking about things. And, I mean, it's a great comment to make when we're sitting in this building. And the Beatles didn't become the Beatles because of hi-fi. You know what I mean? And people didn't become fans of the Beatles because they bought albums. They bought singles. The notional thing of listening to a 45-minute piece of continuous unbroken music is very much a creation of going into the late 60s and really through the 70s. And people once upon a time would listen to a series of different artists in a course of a listening session by taking one single off and putting another single on. So it's not wrong jumping around between music. It's not wrong jumping around between different genres, different types, different eras, different styles. It's actually totally fine as a way of consuming music. So I think there's a really interesting parallel methodology of listening where sometimes you want to sit down with the glass of wine and listen to Floyd for the umpteenth time. I like Floyd, so that's okay. And sometimes you want to dump between 10 different tracks because that's what you're in the mood for. I think that's... Well, none of us, by the way, are saying this, but I think we're very, very wary of the notional thing of inverted snobbery, of saying that there's only one right way to listen to music. You listen to music how you want to listen to music.
So there's no right way to listen to music.
Correct.
I think that's a good observation because, again, the expert problem, sometimes people have this idea that there is a right way and a wrong way of listening to music. So that's interesting to dive into. So while there are a lot of both excitement and resentment about these shiny new technologies that we have been touching a little bit upon, what do you see has stayed pretty constant over the past 50 years in terms of our behaviors and consumption in music? We touched a little bit upon it also. Are there any things from the past, so maybe what things from the past, because of course there are things from the past, that we can safely assume will remain part of the future of the recorded music industry? And maybe that's to you first. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah, let's start there.
Well, we're the end of it, and he's the start of it. So it's the transducer, the thing that turns the one signal into the other signal. In our case, it's the piece of music, whether it came in via a stream or on a record or on a CD or whatever, beamed into your head. Somewhere along the line, someone's got to turn it into something that moves air, that creates sound, which is the audio part of it, which is the speaker or the headphone or whatever else. So the things that we do today are a great deal more sophisticated, we'd like to think, but fundamentally how they work haven't changed in the last 50 years. A speaker that was up there 50 years ago is recognisably a speaker today.
Yeah? What would you put in, maybe on the consumer behavior part?
Yeah, so I'm coming in from a slightly different angle, but I think the reason we listen to music hasn't changed, and will not change. We all listen to music because it's an emotional experience.
Because I think contextualized, so when you're in the context, don't you think it has...
It might have different, yeah, but most of us listen to music, either to suit a mood or because we want to listen to something, or we just want to be engaged, or we want the music to lift our spirits. There may be whatever reasons, but it's all an emotional experience, and I think that we always listen to music for those experiences, and I don't think that will change moving forward. So that's a very important thing. Another aspect I think that will not change in the music industry is the importance of concerts. So, it's a great way to connect with your artist. Obviously now, with the pandemic, a lot of things have moved virtually, and, you see concerts on Fortnite and things like that. But, whether virtual or, a live event, it brings fans together. It's a way of community building, or whatever you may want to call it. And, it just brings people together with a common cause. And I think that connects, listeners to the artist. I mean, I attended the Coldplay concert in Wembley a few years ago, and I'll never forget that experience. I love Coldplay, and I'll never forget that experience, when they just bring the stars on, when the song is playing, or whatever, the experience is. So I think that will always remain an important part of the music listening journey for consumers.
I think that connects very well to your focus on experience and emotions.
Absolutely, and just the idea of a communal experience. Obviously, in my industry, we make these films for cinema with the intention that people are going to sit in a room and experience it together. And a lot of our technical decisions are based on that. We're working in surround sound. We might do things that reflect the story and play with the speakers and change with how you actually experience it. But then someone might watch that same film on their phone on Netflix and things like that. So it's something we think about a lot, is that the idea that ultimately what we're looking for is making a lot of people feel something at the same time, when we're using what we record in that way. And that make every decision I make in this room when I'm recording a score in a couple of days' time, we're already thinking of how that's going to be heard. I'll record a string section very closely mic'd because I want that to feel like it's absolutely around you in the theatre or in your headphones, because that might make you feel in a different way. And I think that the things we've learned over the last 50 years are all these subtleties that when you add them all together, they can really make an emotional experience. But at the heart of that is performance, and it's character, and it's often it's mistakes. It's things that aren't quite right, and it's not perfection, and it's not things that are tidy and clean. A lot of the records that we love and sit there with a glass of wine listening to, you can feel the room, and you can feel the people within it. And that's to me what we need to cling on to as much as possible.
I think that's a really important point though, right? I mean, the industry is, this is not directed at anybody in this room, just to be clear. The industry is full of conflations where we confuse the opportunity presented by new technology with what it actually means for the consumer, where we try to throw numbers at a customer that's not buying a computer and doesn't care about data or sampling rates or any of those other things. What they want to listen to is the Stooges or whatever it is they want to listen to. So we I think, have created sometimes our own problems. A lot of the times, some of the formats that we've offered have actually done an amazing job of getting you closer than ever to that experience, whether it's imperfections or perfections. But the consumer's gone, you know what, I don't care. I don't care, it's too complex. I don't want to know about that. That's way too much. Or, what, you want me to buy another format? Which is the other thing that we do all the time. So I do think, and I've said this to you earlier on, but I'm going to reopen it up as a topic right now. I actually think today, right now, is actually pretty much a golden age for audio because, unlike a lot of those earlier techs, you can get high resolution through your phone. You don't have to go out and buy a brand new disc and a brand new disc player to play it. It suddenly becomes a lot more broadly accessible, probably the most broadly accessible it's ever been. That doesn't mean to say that getting the most from it is simple. Sometimes that requires a little bit of hardware investment. But just your first part of it of, do I want to tick the box to get high resolution? I've got it. Don't have to buy any new hardware. I'm paying an extra £5 a month. Job done. That's a completely different story from how it was 15 years ago. That's buying a new disc player and then replacing your old disc collection.
And when I heard that, you know, the golden age, we're in the golden age of music, I was like, wow, really? It feels like the conversation right now in the music industry is not that kind of understanding of it. But it is really with accessibility, with the way that you can easily adjust it to your own needs and guess, you know, and you don't have to buy all kind of new hardware all the time.
Well, you said it, and Steve said it as well earlier on, right? I mean, certainly in my era, clearly, if you wanted to go and buy a new album, you had to go and find a way to hang out in Selectadisc in Nottingham for long enough to listen to it without anybody noticing. And that's how it was, right? Because, or you listened to it on Sunday on the radio and then you tried to record it and it was crap, but you got it. That's how you did it.
How many recordings like that? I have so many recordings from like really bad radio recordings.
Yeah. But you now find a song and you can socially refer it to everybody in this room like that. Done.
Yeah.
And we can all be listening to that same song. Communal experiences. All of those things have radically transformed the way that music can spread and socialise and influence and all those other things.
So looking into the future, do you think that it will continue to be a golden age of music, or are we in a very specific time right now?
I think, look, I mean, everything that we're seeing, I mean, you mentioned it earlier on as well. You buy a new car today, and every car audio system that you're going to get is 20 years more advanced, much more sophisticated than the stuff, you know, I grew up with, and is massively better. You buy a new pair of headphones. Doesn't matter which brand, not even Bowers Wilkins, although we do make headphones too. They're also very good. I think that we are in this world where the customer is increasingly aware of the fact that there is such a thing as quality. Whether they choose to buy it, separate point, but they're aware of the fact that it exists. I mean, think about this. 20 years ago, when the iPod first came out, and you saw somebody wearing a pair of really big headphones over your ears, that's quite rare, right? If you saw somebody walking down the street, odds on DJ. Almost certainly, that's what they were. Today, everybody's got them. And that, I think, points to, if nothing else, an opportunity. If nothing else, an awareness of the fact that there's more to it. And hopefully, depending, some of those customers might go out and spend more, buy more, go physical, go to a hi-fi shop, you know, all those kinds of things.
Do you agree with the fact that we are in the golden age of music right now?
Yeah, I think we've come through certainly a very weird period where for a long time things did keep improving, and then the MP3 happened and you were throwing away so much of the content. You could mix your soundtrack album or whatever and hear it as the MP3 version, and you were missing an awful lot of subtleties just because of the way to get the file that small would work in those days, and that's incredible now. You can stream full bandwidth. You can go exactly the same resolution I'm working in. You can hear it on your phone that way through your headphones. So in that sense, absolutely, you know, we can work with confidence that everything we're doing can be heard now, which is a huge step.
That's, I guess, a good thing when you make music, that people actually hear it.
I mean, I always...
Probably helps.
Yeah.
But this building here, you know, you listen to the Beatles recordings, the format they were working on was a 2-inch tape that you get 4 tracks on. That's a huge amount of space for the audio, and then it got smaller and smaller and smaller, you know, as more tracks happened. And really, we're back now to having the best quality all the time. So yeah, we are in a great place technologically.
And you agree?
Yeah, I agree. That's how I started this conversation where I said audio quality is going full circle now. And it is a really great space to be in, because it's not just audio good quality music, but it's also accessible good quality music, premium quality music. So many consumers have access to it. So I think, yeah, we're in a very good era of music.
That's a good starting point for the future. I want to dive a little bit into what you said just before we started going into the golden age of music, and that's the the ethics and considerations of mixing, remixing, demixing, and mastering with technology that creates perfection versus closeness to human sounds. So I know you have a lot to say about this, so let's dive a little bit into it, because I also think it's very interesting in this kind of rapid development we have within music and music creation. What are your thoughts on happy accidents, mistakes, and the humanization of recorded music?
I mean, happy accidents is essentially my career, really. It's sitting with instruments and making a mistake and realizing that mistake's actually doing something really interesting to the story. If a string, a violin player, for example, is playing a very soft line and their finger just slightly falls off, a little crackle appears, there's something very delicate in that. There's something very emotional in that. And often you find, we can make any sound now. On a laptop, you could have every piano that's ever been played in this room has been sampled. It's all there. An orchestra you can play. But those little moments of individual, unrepeatable magic are what makes you as a human being lean in, because it intrigues you. And if you attach that to a story, you can do something really powerful. And all the directors I work with, they're after something unique. They're not after, something that can come off a preset pack. So you're looking for unrepeatable magic moments, really, and that's what you're fishing for all the time.
Unrepeatable magic moments.
Yeah.
I mean, again, great being in here. Some of the guys that I spend a lot of time with here are the guys who have to deal with that challenge, all the time, trying to how to kind of reverentially retread something that's been recorded 35, 40 years ago and culturally is as significant to modern music as the Mona Lisa is to art, and the pressure that they have to go through to make those creative decisions and those interpretations. I mean, Sean McGee being the perfect example, where he said in the early days of the Beatles, you're obviously well aware of this, the band's over here and the vocal track's here, and it kind of sounds completely weird. And he's having to kind of merge it into create something modern, something that people who listen to modern stereo are used to, with a vocal in the middle. But all the way through, he's conscious that if he's going to leave the building, there's going to be gangs of people out there ready to kind of burn him at the stake, for like being a music heretic. I think my perspective on it is, I think this is what you're saying as well, is if it was intrinsic within the piece of music as a naturally occurring mistake, something that either happened as a result of the artist's choices or an artist's mistake, that's the piece of music. Leave it. If it was an outcome of limitations of recording technology at that time, whether there was print through, the obvious example, like Led Zeppelin album we spoke about, that sort of stuff, all that, then try and correct it. That would be, I think, a reasonably reverential way of doing it. And that actually means often you get an even more rewarding music experience off the back of it, because you just take away things, for example, like the noise floor. And then suddenly you can hear more of, for example, the mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, since we're talking about the future in the next 50 years, do you think that will be a huge part of the future of music, the human mistakes as well, the happy mistakes?
I think we the more that there is of everything, the more that character is the thing that really shines through. It's the unique voice, it's the unique way of putting a chord sequence together. There's so much stuff that is produced. It's kind of been made easy for people to produce content that's incredibly high standard without necessarily having to put too much into it in the historical way. And so I think things that are a bit more unique are the things that will shine to the top. And you can kind of feel that with, even if it's someone like Billie Eilish, her way of singing was really quite a striking thing the first time you heard it. This sort of incredibly whispered vocal, using the technology, really sort of using digital technology to make a voice feel like it was inside your head. Those things are anything new that just really makes people move in a different way.
Well, I mean, Rasika's mentioned it, you've mentioned it as well. This is the other point. The modern consumer is time poor, is amazingly challenged in terms of the numbers of different routes to access that they have to different forms of content. There's so much coming in, it almost becomes saturation, right? Getting up in the morning and reaching for your smartphone, shame on you.
What, you don't?
No,
just pretending,
but
saying it.
But the key, I think, within that then is if you're going to make something that actually makes people, A, want to connect with it, and B, more importantly, from our collective perspective, maybe spend some money on it, they've got to care.
Yeah.
They've got to engage, and it's got to cut through. It's got to cut through the noise, and the noise is everywhere. And I don't mean metaphorically in the music sense, I mean literally in the sense of what's pouring into every consumer's minds every single morning. So I mean, the record industry's done an incredible job of it already, creating these unbelievable retreads, reissues that are just so, if you're into it, so compulsive to buy that people are spending 3 times as much money on the record that they bought 15 years ago because they like the new version of it. But the rest of the industry needs to catch up to that, I think, getting to that point where we connect more not only with the content but also with the stories that surround that content, in a way, by the way, that doesn't also overload the artist in that always-on culture sense, because I do get that point too. And humanity, I mean, Jack over there, did a piece with Little Sims a little while ago, where she said when people are listening to music, they're listening to intention, they're listening to humanity. And I think that's so fundamental as a way of talking about music. It's a really key point, right? It's not a collection of notes, it's a person trying to tell you a story. And they might be telling you how pissed off they are, and it might be telling you how happy they are, but it's still a song. That's what a song is. So we're just got to make sure that people in their busy lives, with everything coming into them, have the chance to kind of take 30 seconds and try and listen to what's being said.
And that's what I also want to know a lot about the consumer behavior, because I also touched upon that in the liquid consumer, right? That convenience is said to be key kind of in the attraction, but there are so many other factors that are also driving consumption. So can you maybe talk a little bit about some of the other factors that drive consumer behavior apart from that? How can we keep the consumer at the heart of the design and innovation while still pushing the boundaries, so to say, of...
So yes, you're right. Convenience is key. Consumers want plug-and-play solutions, and solutions that are easy for them to work with. But beyond that, I mean, what ticks for consumers? Again, good quality devices and music. When we do our consumer research as well, I think across the board, whether you're talking about music or you're talking about home audio hardware or personal audio headphones, or if you're talking about in car, audio quality comes up as the kind of within the top 3 purchase criteria for your future purchase of any of these devices. And if I have to go to each one of them, I think it's the topmost criteria for in-car purchases. It's the second most important criteria in headphones. And when I was looking at data around smart speakers as well, almost more than half of smart speaker owners said they wanted future smart speakers to have better sound. And out of that population, I think about more than half of them said they're willing to pay more for it. So obviously it means that consumers are willing to spend and they are ready to seek out, good solutions. So I think that's a very important point. The other important point that comes up when you're looking at, home audio hardware is convenience and ease of use. And that's a very important point. And another very important aspect in all this is price. So yes, consumers want everything, but they also want it at the right price. So, it's about bringing everything together for consumers. I mean, their needs are actually quite basic. They're not going to tell you they want, head tracking and proximity sensing, and they're not going to tell you the features. Those are all tick box features that work in the back to give them that seamless experience. They just say, I want a good experience when I listen to music. I want good quality sound. I want it easily available. So as long as we're able to give that to them, I think, you've got a happy consumer, because their needs at the end of the day are quite basic. So from that standpoint, yeah, I think...
And I think it's pretty clear to all of you that the consumers and the audiences and the listeners to the music should also be the center. Of course, what the artist wants to get out, but also the experience that they get. And I know you actually also have some opinions about the aspects of how does that music be recorded then, how to record music for the future audiences, because obviously we'll be in different situations and be more used to having the music in the different situations. So what aspects of the recording industry process could and should change as a result of the changing ways that we consume and listen to music? Like, what could be sort of your number one suggestion for the industry to adapt to this change, if you can start with that,
in terms of that, I think the encouraging thing for me is that it's becoming possible that the things that we've always done for high-end cinema, you can do that in your home now, or you can do it through headphones. And so sometimes that means things that we're doing for story reasons in a movie, it's now possible to know that will carry through. There was a film called Last Night in Soho we did a couple of years ago, where the entirety of that film was in mono at the start, and it's only when we went into a dream sort of sequence that all of a sudden the sound all emptied out around you, and it became this big sort of Technicolor Wizard of Oz kind of moment. And a few years ago, we'd have probably not done what we did because you'd have known kind of it was going to be wasted. People were going to see it on TV or whatever, and they wouldn't have had that. But now there are Atmos soundbars, there are things like that. So I think it's becoming much more open to us now. We can go further, I think, and that's the thing that's exciting to me, is that I don't feel on a sound level we've touched the sides of what you can do with storytelling and audio. You know, there's been some films where, you know, I mean, Gravity was one that I did where we got rid of the concept of the music coming in front of you, because why would you? You're in space, right? So you made this unique sound experience, and I can't think of many films that have done that since. And we've got all this opportunity to do it now, and it's becoming possible to make everyone experience that in different ways. And we think about how we record that, so we record things differently so that we can spin these sounds around the room. We don't have to commit to a stereo image anymore. And so, yeah, I think, if anything, it's just like, let's use some of these opportunities finally, you know, and stretch sound as much as visuals have been, you know, they've spent so much on CGI over the years and made visions you can't imagine, but with sound we haven't really. You know, so
maybe it's not me being, I don't know as much as you within this field, but is that sort of spatial sounds, for instance, is that what this involves? Oh, I don't know what that was. Sounded like somebody farted over there. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, spatial sounds, yeah, absolutely. That's the sort of world we're talking. And I don't think we've really touched the size of what we can do with immersive sound. You know, we're now into sort of VR and things like that. What's a soundtrack for a VR film when you're in a world which is totally immersive and it's happening around you? We saw some of the metaverse stuff you were showing there. How does music work in that sort of world? You know, it's kind of odd to have music starting like it would in a film where it's very prescriptive. How can it be an interactive thing? All these things that, you know, we can find out, and we'll make something that's so incredible that it'll be like, you know, the cinema thing when the film showed the train coming into the station. Everyone went, I must see a film. We have to do that now with these immersive technologies of sound, make something that you have to hear, you know. So, yeah.
So that's a good thing for the industry to start working on. And I would say that was a very happy mistake over there. I like that. You know, we talk also a lot about creative friction, that you have to put that into the music in order to make it alive and get this emotion. So let's get some more mistakes in here and not be so stiff about things. We're coming to an end to our panel. So unless somebody else has something with the recording process, I'd actually like to sort of move into the last question. We've talked about a lot of things today, right? But what do you think is when you're looking back 50 years, forward 50 years, what is the number one key takeaway that you want the audience to take with them home today?
That's an easily small question, isn't it? But, yeah.
There you go, you have 2 minutes, no.
Yeah. People still like listening to music. They still like listening to music probably more than ever. I think both the metrics that we can now dive into that we probably never had access to before, and simply the amount of money that's being spent in the industry, especially on headphones, kind of tend to suggest that we've still got a business and we've still got a future and we're collectively plenty of opportunity. The cars that we're working on, the other things suggest that that's being translated not just in the personal space but into the wider space as well. So I think, as I said earlier on, I'm going to leave it on that point. It's the golden age. I think we've got lots of opportunity to go forward. Let's just keep it simple. Let's, to your point, focus on the experiences, not on the numbers. People don't need to know about all the data and all the rest of it. They just want to know, is it going to put whoever it is that I'm listening to in the room with me, and is it going to blow my mind? And hopefully it does.
Thank you.
I think for me, it's about, when you think about hardware, I think it's about bringing simple and intuitive products that consumers find easy to use. But more importantly, it's also about educating the consumers about the benefits that we are bringing with all these advancements in technology. So making it easy for them to understand why these technologies are in there and what benefits it really brings to them. I think that will really help consumers appreciate their devices and music much more.
Yeah, and I'd probably return to where I started with, that everything is stories. You know, every conversation's a story. Everything we say to each other is a form of a story. And music's one of the best ways to tell stories. So we can push that, and we can find new ways with the technology that's available to tell stories. And yeah, hopefully, find whole new languages to speak that can take us all into exciting places for 50 years.
I love that. New languages, golden age. A lot of good things have been discussed today, I think. Thank you so much for participating to this wonderful panel. And also, of course, for inviting them on stage. We covered a lot of ground on the discussion, and I think that this whole importance to strike a balance between pushing the boundaries of innovation while keeping the listener, the audiences, the stories at the forefront of the decisions. So I really look forward to continuing this conversation. And in the future Insight sessions, and I'm pretty sure this will be said as well, we will be diving much more into some of the other areas of the possible futures of the music industry. But thank you so much. Large hand for the panel. Thank you.